Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Sarah, for your kind introduction, and thank you, ADGM, for putting such an important event together. I'm delighted to be here, to be back. I've been tasked with moderating a panel on the Abu Dhabi's investment landscape, which is something close to my heart, and I've been analyzing for the past 10 years since I moved here for the first time. And I'm delighted to have such a diverse panel that can give an overview from sovereign investors to asset managers to financial institutions and, of course, regulators. So I've been told that the panel will shrink even more, so we're going to make it briefer. But Bill, I'm going to start with you. Obviously, you have worked in this space for the past 20 years. What can you tell us about the different sovereign wealth funds and public pension funds operating out of Abu Dhabi today?
So thank you, Diego. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. I've been asked to give a brief overview of the sovereign wealth fund landscape. I think most, both investors and asset managers, are aware that Abu Dhabi has nearly $1.5 trillion of assets under management with sovereigns. And I think some of the more historic players are probably well known, but there have been a number of new additions to the sovereign landscape. So I'm going to try to move fairly quickly. I'm going to identify a total of 10 sovereign wealth funds that are here. And the easiest way to sort of categorize it for me is to think about sort of the three primary types of sovereign wealth funds if you look at the global categorization. The first is the savings or future generation fund. The second is the strategic or development fund. And the third is the pension fund. So Abu Dhabi has representatives in all of those categories. No one fund is the same. And a number of the funds are hybrid and they play more than one role. But in the savings or future generation portfolio, you have the historic Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, and you also have the Abu Dhabi Investment Council. Both are focused on long-term investments. The notion of a savings or future generation fund is the eventual depletion of natural resource wealth and a nest egg of capital available to support the country. The next segment is the Strategic Development Fund. And the two most obvious based here in Abu Dhabi are Mubadala Investment Company, which is really a hybrid fund. And Mubadala has been involved in nearly every major economic strategic development here in Abu Dhabi over the last decade or more. And then also the ADQ is the second. ADQ has an interesting role. It's both a holding company for Abu Dhabi operating companies and also an outbound strategic investor. The third category is pensions, and you have the Abu Dhabi Pension Fund, and obviously its goal is to ensure the support of its pensioners over time. We also have a number of sector funds here, and so we have the new Abu Dhabi Growth, which is a subsidiary of ADQ, focused on growth and value and special situations, and then you have the energy sector funds. You have TAQA and you have Masdar, that again fall into the development bucket, but are part of specifically within the energy portfolio. And last but not least, just for completeness, based in Abu Dhabi, you have the two federal sovereign wealth funds. You have the Emirates Investment Authority, which like ADQ is a holding company at the federal level and also has an outbound portfolio. And you have GIPSA, the General Pension and Social Security Authority, which is the federal pension. So a total of 10 that I just named very quickly, but it's an important part of obviously the overall landscape in Abu Dhabi.
That's great. Thank you, Bill, for that. I couldn't have done it better myself. Hashim, obviously you have a very insightful view into all these players that Bill just mentioned, and you've seen the evolution of the Abu Dhabi investment landscape to new players. So can you walk us through the emergence of new asset managers, family offices, etc., from your point of view?
Yeah, I mean, you know, Abu Dhabi is not new to asset managers across the sector, from the traditional to the alternatives, because realistically they've been doing it through ADIA all the way in the 80s. And it's really a reflection also of my career. I started in '89 trading foreign exchange in ADIA, and then when we figured out it's very difficult to trade foreign exchange, we went searching for managers. And then, you know, you had the evolution of alternatives. And then we went out to set up another sovereign wealth fund, that was ADIC. And now I have my own business with my partner. And we have here this great platform that really is opening Abu Dhabi's knowledge through sovereign wealth investing, and all of these managers who used to come to Abu Dhabi going back to the 80s. And now they have really the ability to share their knowledge and what they're seeing in markets to everybody. So to me, it's very much a continuous evolution that Abu Dhabi has gone through, and you really have a very deep content. Deep content as in if you look through how many people are working or have worked in these sovereign wealth funds. If you just search through LinkedIn, there are thousands. In fact, you know, I was involved recently in hiring staff for a large family office here, and I was surprised to see the depth of people that they brought. And this is not just the typical monitoring, no, actually portfolio managers. So to me, what we have here today is a natural evolution, and it's not difficult to do it because you have the content. You really have managers who've been coming here for a long period of time. You know, we, throughout our career, my partner and I, have been a day one investor in many of today's known alternative managers. And that's just because Abu Dhabi has been, as Bill alluded to, saving extra money and putting it in a program. So you really have a know-how, there is an infrastructure, and there is a history. You know, the fact that you've gone through a drop in oil price, to a boom, to a global financial crisis, to the Asian crisis, all of these crises, you went through them as sovereign wealth funds. Naturally, you went through the evolution. In fact, to me, when I want to allocate to a manager, I want to see what history he has gone through. And you could say Abu Dhabi ticks that box. So that's, I mean, that to me, what is exciting about Abu Dhabi and actually being here today.
That's fascinating. Thank you, Hashim.
Okay.
I appreciate it. Karim, obviously, Chimera Capital is one of the latest ones to get into the stage and is making a lot of headlines lately. So can you walk us through your current focus, perhaps including ETFs and venture capital?
Sure. So Chimera Capital, it's again, I think we quite evolved in the last 2.5 years, 3 years. The idea was to try to launch innovative products and see the gaps, you know, and you know, we feel in the region. So we started, my colleagues on the ETF side. So that was the start of the business. And now I think they launched 9 ETFs, and I think they announced the 10th. And I think this business has been doing really well. And then on the venture side, again, we saw the opportunity, especially back in, you know, like what COVID, and at that time, I think it was a big catalyst for venture. And the mandate was to go global from day one, and to, again, we're becoming an asset manager, right? So the idea was worked on launching our first VC fund, Chimera Global Fund 1. And that was, let's say, kind of our debut fund. So we launched that end of May last year. We're targeting 50 million. We ended up with end of October, we pushed the limit to 75, and we saw participation from Mubadala and other prominent regional investors. Then early this year, we launched another vehicle, which is a co-managed fund between us and another global fund manager called Alpha Wave Global. That's Alpha Wave Ventures 2, which is a bit over $10 billion of commitment in venture, which is basically have a global mandate and idea to back global category leaders, and you have sub-categories or strategies under that fund between India, Web3, crypto, life sciences. So it's quite diverse. We also recently, actually last week, we launched another fund on the debt side, which is a credit fund. Again, this is a $2 billion fund on the venture, again with a global mandate. So yeah, we see Abu Dhabi and AGM as a great platform, and we're proud to be part of it, and we're quite excited on what to come.
Great. Well, there is definitely no shortage of capital here, that's for sure. Kay, you recently joined ADX after an extensive career in investment banking. What are you seeing at the moment in ADX, given your privileged overview of the market?
Yeah, I mean, look, thank you, Diego. I mean, I think what's so interesting about ADX is it really sits at the heart of the financial markets, both here, regionally, and internationally. And given the launch of the Abu Dhabi IPO fund, let's start with the IPOs. This year, the UAE has listed 22% of the IPOs in EMEA, of those above $100 million. 36% of the value of all IPOs raised in EMEA was in the UAE. We listed more IPOs than the UK, France, Germany, Italy, and Spain combined. And I think that's a tremendous achievement that we can all agree on. And that really demonstrates the depth of the capital markets we've built here, the Abu Dhabi ecosystem, and the partners that we have. And I think you'll continue to see that more. And if you look at the IPOs that have listed, they've performed tremendously this year, be it Abu Dhabi Ports, which is up 48% and oversubscribed 25 times, through to Barouge and Bajil as well, and more recently Bayonat as well. But we've seen fantastic performance. And it's not just the IPOs. The growth market, we've added new companies, allowing investors to access a new dynamic part of the Abu Dhabi economy, and allowing the shareholders, founders, and families the ability to raise capital, increase their level of awareness without the same level of onerous requirements that a primary capital markets listing have. We've also launched our indices, the FADX 15 and the FADX 15 futures. 7 ETFs with Chimera covering the region plus Turkey and the US for our investors. Our bond market continues to evolve, with TACA listing $18 billion worth of bonds as well. And then, of course, our first regional SPAC as well, which again demonstrates the forward-thinkingness of ADX. For investors, both institutional and retail, domestic and international, we're bringing more and more products and assets for them to invest in. And I think that's been validated by international investors who've increased their holdings by 75% here this year. And regionally, we launched Tabadol, allowing more regional investors the ability to invest directly into our assets here, providing again access to the wonderful companies that we have.
Great, very interesting. Okay, thank you. Arvind, sir, you've been involved in all sort of players in the Abu Dhabi Inc. scheme, from the Executive Council to ADNOC to ADGM, obviously. What are your views, 30,000-foot view, if you allow me the comparison?
Thanks for that, Diego. I think a lot of what I was going to say has been covered by Bill and Hashim. I think what you've seen is a very natural evolution, right? Today, of course, the sovereign wealth funds continue to go from strength to strength, right? I mean, I keep calling it a Goldilocks moment for the region. And so you're seeing that. But what we're also seeing, sorry, is the proliferation on the private side, right? High-grade institutional capital on the private side. You know, we've got a couple of the gentlemen sitting here. You know, you've got Lever, you've got Chimera. You know, we've got players such as IHC. You know, G42 has just launched another $10 billion fund. So there's a lot of private capital that's coming in. You're also seeing the family offices, I think, getting more and more sophisticated. Right? You're seeing institutionalization in that space. All of that bodes extremely well, right? I mean, with a thriving public market, with an equally thriving, I believe, private market, you know, that's an area as ADGM that, you know, we've been playing a big role in with our progressive regulations, right? I mean, we've got, you know, we've been very big on digitization. We've been very big on tokenization. You know, we've got platforms such as Securities, such as Peregrine that have come into our platforms here. And we think combination of that, you know, gives you, as an entrepreneur, as an investor, you know, amazing opportunities to come and partake and be part of that ecosystem.
Perfect. Thank you, Arvind. And I know I'm conscious of time, so we're going to do a flash round of 30 seconds each for the second question. Bill, maybe you can brief us a little bit about the legal changes that you're seeing, including the UAE golden visas that have been introduced recently.
Yeah, I'd be happy to, and with only 30 seconds, I need to move quickly. So, I mean, the legal developments affect all facets of doing business here. You have not only the ADGM as a platform for investors and managers, but new regulations coming out regularly, whether it's crypto, whether it's ESG, which changes were announced last week. So that's an important area of legal change. Onshore, you have the liberalization of foreign ownership rules, which allows international companies to own up to 100% in most sectors. You have new transparency laws dealing with anti-money laundering and know your customer. You have a new data protection law. And so all of the sort of efforts around the 50th anniversary of the UAE, a significant number of those were important legal and regulatory developments. But Diego just mentioned the golden visa. One of the most important changes that we're seeing is to attract and retain global talent. The golden visa is a 5 or 10-year visa for individuals that are contributing to the growth of the economy, contributing to the UAE, not tied to employment. But my last point, last week there was a really important announcement. Employer-based visas are now extended for 6 months after someone transitions from a job. So historically, people who worked here and were on an employment visa may have to leave the market. Now they have a 6-month period to stay in the market, look for a new opportunity, and stay a part of the growing economy here.
Great, thank you. Hashim, perhaps you can talk a little bit quickly about sovereign wealth funds taking ownership of asset managers as well as seeding funds. How do you see this trend going forward?
So I think, so to me, it's not new as in if a sovereign wealth fund sees an opportunity in an investment that they want to seed the fund. And in fact, if I'm allocating capital and I see an opportunity, I want to capture as much possible of it. So that's not new and continues to be. I think quite often asset managers make the mistake of thinking, yeah, a sovereign wealth fund will not invest if there are no other LPs. That is not correct. Second, I think a GP stakes, yes, GP stakes are interesting because at the end of the day, if you understand asset managers, you understand the cash flow that they produce. So yes, the region here has done GP stakes. We, for example, invest on behalf of our investors in a fund that looks at GP stakes. So to me, whether it's an emerging manager, existing manager, or an existing opportunity that a fund manager is raising a fund to, it's yes, this is the place to come to, especially because you have dedicated teams who are looking at markets, they see an opportunity, and they want to really go after that opportunity versus having to tick the box as in recommended by a consultant or not.
Excellent. Thank you, Hashim. Karim, very quickly, you mentioned Mubadala before. How do you see the collaboration between the different players within Abu Dhabi?
So on the venture capital side, the great thing about it is very collaborative, right? So you have, in every round, you have different investors, and then there is always room, for having different entities joining the same round. So again, every case is different, and then you could potentially collaborate with, different either sovereign wealth funds or different GPs. So we see this obviously quite often. And in general, collaboration is quite active, and we have always ongoing dialogues, depending if again there is a fit on the investments and all of that. So yeah, it's quite a collaborative one. Excellent. I'm trying to keep it short. So.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, we saw the announcement of the IPO fund this morning. What other surprises do you have in store for us for 2023?
Well, hopefully quite a few. There's a lot of initiatives going on at ADX, which we very much look forward to announcing in due course. I think ADX will continue to build on the successes, continue to innovate to build that dynamic exchange that's attractive for regional and international investors and issuers. So we're very much looking forward to that. In terms of the pipeline, while the rest of the world is going to continue to experience significant volatility, our pipeline is looking very strong and represents a diverse sector of the economy, as well as a diverse shareholder base as well, be it government-backed, family, sponsor. We're seeing increasing interest for Abu Dhabi ADX as an international listing hub.
Perfect. And Arvind, just to close up the panel, how do you see Abu Dhabi comparing to other financial centers such as Singapore, Hong Kong? Why should a company come to ADGM to set up here?
Well, I think there are multiple reasons, right? I mean, I always look at it through 4 lenses, right? It's access to capital, access to markets, access to talent and infrastructure. You look at each of those counts, I think there's a big tick. Access to capital, I think we've covered that enough today. Access to markets, I mean, you've got the Miyasa markets that you can go to from here, and that's an $8 trillion market, which is huge, and you can access that from here. You've got access to talent, with the visa policies that Bill spoke about earlier as well. I think we've got probably some of the best talent globally that all wants to come here. We've got over 200 nationalities in the UAE today, so I mean, that's massive. And from an infrastructure standpoint, I mean, you can see the infrastructure around here. I think it's quite obvious, but also from a regulatory standpoint, I mean, ADGM probably is one of the most progressive regulators out there. Whether it's digital assets, whether it's carbon credit trading, whether it's ESG. I mean, we've kind of been known to come out first with all regulations in this space. So, I mean, as ADGM, we really look forward to it. I mean, if we can have more platforms like this, where we bring all of Abu Dhabi together, I think, there's a very bright future ahead.
Perfect. Well, I'm afraid we don't have much more time, but thank you very much to all panelists for a fascinating conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.